All right, let's just jump right in. So deep inside the ancient book of Daniel, you find these absolutely wild prophecies. I mean, we're talking about these super vivid visions of four massive world empires, each one set to rise and fall, one after the other, literally changing the course of history.
But here's the real kicker, the question that's bugged scholars for ages. Could a dream from 2,500 years ago actually predict the future of global power? I mean, seriously? Well, believe it or not, that's the very puzzle we're going to try and crack today.
Okay, so our story kicks off in Daniel chapter 2. You've got the king of Babylon, this guy Nebuchadnezzar, and he has this dream that totally freaks him out. He sees this enormous statue, and the very first thing he notices? Its head. It's made of pure, shining gold.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Fast forward a few years to chapter 7. The prophet Daniel himself has a vision that runs in parallel. And what's the first thing he sees? A beast that looks like a lion with eagle's wings. So get this, you have a king's dream and a prophet's vision, and they both start with this powerful, almost identical image.
And the parallels just keep coming. The statue's torso, it's made of silver. And Daniel's second beast, it's a hungry, ravenous bear, basically giving the command to go and gorge itself.
All right, next up, the third part. The statue's midsection is bronze, and Daniel's matching beast is a leopard. But hold on, this is no ordinary leopard. We're talking about a super-fast creature with 4 wings and 4 heads. It's a clear symbol of lightning-fast conquest and a kingdom that's going to get split up.
And then we get to the fourth and final kingdom. The statue's legs are pure iron, strong, crushing, destructive. And Daniel's fourth beast? It's so terrifying, so otherworldly, he can't even name it. It's just this dreadful thing with iron teeth and 10 horns. Absolutely horrifying.
So let's just pause for a second. We've got 2 different visions, right? But they line up perfectly, describing 4 world powers, one after the other. The big question is, which ones? That's the ancient puzzle we're here to solve.
Now, to even start piecing this together, you can't just skip from the Old Testament to the New. There's this super important 400-year gap in between that people call the silent years. But let me tell you, they were anything but silent. This period was absolutely jam-packed with world-changing events and huge shifts in power.
So take a look at this timeline. When the Old Testament wraps up, the Persian Empire is running the show. Then boom, 331 BC, Alexander the Great comes crashing in with his Greek Empire. After he dies, his generals just fight over everything for like centuries. And then finally, 63 BC, the Romans show up and take over. So you've got Persia, then Greece, then Rome. This is the historical backdrop we need to understand Daniel's prophecies.
Okay, so with all that history in our back pocket, scholars have basically landed on 2 main theories. 2 completely different ways of solving this prophetic puzzle.
And this chart lays out the debate perfectly. Look, everybody agrees on the first one. The head of gold, the lion. That's Babylon. No debate there. But after that, that's where things get messy. The traditional Roman view says the kingdoms are Babylon, then Medo-Persia, then Greece, and then Rome. But the Greek view sees it differently. It splits Media and Persia into 2 separate kingdoms, which then pushes Greece into that number 4 spot. So you can see the whole argument really boils down to, who is that terrifying 4th beast?
So how in the world do we decide which view is right? Well, it turns out there's another piece to this puzzle, a huge one actually. We have to look at a third vision, over in Daniel chapter 8, and this one might just be the key.
And here's what's so amazing about this particular vision. Daniel isn't just left scratching his head trying to figure it out. No, an angel literally shows up to interpret the whole thing for him. It's like the book itself gives us the answer key.
Okay, so first, Daniel sees a ram with 2 horns. And the angel couldn't be clearer. He says, that ram, that's the kings of Media and Persia. Bam. No guesswork, no interpretation needed. It's spelled right out for us.
Then a powerful goat with 1 giant horn comes along and just demolishes the ram. And again, the angel spells it out. This goat is the kingdom of Greece. Plain and simple.
But this is the detail that changes everything. Out of one of the horns on that goat, which remember the angel just told us is Greece, a little horn sprouts up. And this little horn represents a ruler who grows exceedingly great and becomes this arrogant, blasphemous figure.
So this little horn guy, he becomes the ultimate litmus test, the key to the whole puzzle. How each theory deals with this figure, well, that's what reveals its strengths and its weaknesses. Let's break it down.
And this is where the Roman view hits a real snag.
It pretty much has to argue that there are two different little horns. See, the one that comes from the Greek goat in chapter 8, that's clearly the historical tyrant Antiochus IV. But if the fourth beast is Rome, then its little horn has to be some other guy way off in the future, like the Antichrist. The Greek view, though, it's totally consistent. It says the fourth beast is Greece, so the little horn is the exact same person in both visions, Antiochus IV.
And that consistency is a really big deal, right? Because the descriptions of the little horn in chapters 7 and 8 are almost identical. In both visions, he's arrogant, he's boastful, and he attacks God's people. So the Greek view just says, hey, it makes way more sense that they're talking about the same guy, Antiochus IV. The Roman view is left having to explain why Daniel would use the exact same, very specific symbol for two totally different people hundreds of years apart.
But you know, this whole thing is about more than just solving a 2,500-year-old riddle. Honestly, whether the fourth beast was Greece or Rome, the prophecy is pointing to something way bigger. It's showing us a recurring pattern in all of human history.
There's this concept called prophetic telescoping, and it's a cool way to think about it. Imagine looking through a telescope where a mountain in the distance seems like it's right behind a tree up close. The idea here is that one historical event, like a specific evil ruler, can be a prototype, a pattern for other, similar events that happen over and over again, all pointing toward the same big idea.
And you can see that pattern laid out right here. It starts with a prototype, an arrogant king like Belshazzar in Daniel's own time. Then it escalates with someone like Antiochus IV, a guy who literally desecrated the temple. But it doesn't stop with him. History is just littered with despots who fit this exact same mold, this pattern of pride and rebellion. The prophecy hints that this pattern just keeps repeating, maybe even getting worse, until some kind of final, ultimate showdown.
Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. More than just naming old empires, Daniel's visions seem to reveal a timeless cycle. So if history really does repeat itself, if these patterns of power, pride, and rebellion are hardwired into our world, what does that mean we should be watching for today and in the future?